All right, we might get started. Welcome. Can everyone hear me? We are being recorded tonight, just so you know. We warned all the speakers with 1 minute to go. But this is tonight's a joint night that was organised by NAPT with the funding of the New South Wales branch of RNZCP. So we thank them for that, and also, of course, providing the DOATs as well. And I'll initially, Kushbu is basically organised this whole thing, so thanks to that. Thanks, Kushbu. And we thought it was important to bring it out west this year because we recognise you guys get a little bit neglected sometimes, but it's a massive base of trainees out here, so hope that's more convenient for some people. I'd also like to welcome our rural sites, which are, I understand, Orange and Newcastle. Welcome. And there were going to be a few of the NAPT AT reps here as well to answer questions from the trainee point of view, but there's not too many here. Okay, so anyway, I won't spend too much. We need to get straight into it. There's 7 presentations, each are 15 minutes or less. And I'm going to be pretty strict with my little signs here, just so everyone knows, but I've been told that everyone's got it under control. And we might, if the presentations are short and there's time for a question or two, that's okay, but otherwise we might keep the questions until the end. So without any further ado, Chris Ryan's first up.
That's great, thank you very much. So for those who don't know me, I'm a consultation liaison psychiatrist here. I'm actually not the DOAT, but the DOAT had a baby just recently. So she asked if I could step in, which I said I was very happy to do. And I think I'm going to try and keep it much shorter than 15 minutes because that seems like quite a long time, particularly times 6, 5, anyway, whatever it is. The 3 things I was supposed to talk about. The first is what the process is to do CL training. I'll get this out of the way first of all. There's an interview. If you've got one head, we'll probably take you. I'm not sure that's completely true, but I've got to say that most of the people, well, pretty much all the people that apply for CL training are always very impressive. So far, we've not knocked anybody back. They have all been impressive, so if you're sitting there thinking, I'm not impressive, perhaps that's a problem. but all the people that have applied so far have been, so that's been great. And in the interview, it's more just a sort of getting to know things, so I wouldn't worry about that. I assumed everybody had one of those, but Kushbu talked about that. But anyway, we do, but it's not something to be concerned about. Then why you should do CL was part of it, and also what you do in CL training. I'm going to combine those. You should... I got it easy there in Marta. Well, there's 2 reasons you should do CL. First of all, if you did consultation liaison as in basic training and you thought it was great and you want to be a consultation liaison psychiatrist, then you should do CL advanced training. You really should. I probably should put in at this time, because this has always been a thing where people go, they ask someone's advice and they always go, there's no jobs in CL, they say. Now, people have been saying there's no jobs in forever. And I can see why they say it, because you'd think, well, there can't be that many jobs in CL. But look, as it turns out, pretty much everyone that does CL training that wants to become a CL psychiatrist seems to become a CL psychiatrist. That seems to be what happened. I mean, it can't go on forever like that. But literally, they were telling me that 150 years ago. And I've heard everybody say that ever since. Oh, there's no jobs. But it's... it just doesn't seem to pan out that way. People get pregnant or eventually they die or something. and then new people can move in. All right. So if you want to do CL, don't be put off by there's no jobs. Really go for it. You might not start like at RPA or somewhere, but then probably get like the RPA job after 6 months where you don't want to be. So definitely do that. If, however, even if you don't want to be a CL psychiatrist, it is well worth considering doing CL because you've got to understand that, and I think when you're trying to, this isn't quite clear, as clear as it is after you've become a consultant. Once you become a consultant, that's it. You're sort of stuck wherever you are. I mean, I'm happy to be stuck where I like my job, and that's fine. But you're stuck. You don't rotate anymore. You don't get any other new experience. You don't get any formal training. You're just there, and you keep on being there. So you really want to take advantage as much as possible of new experiences and different experiences. And one of the great things about CL is it's 2 years. 1 year you have to do pretty standard traditional consultation liaison in a general hospital, probably like, almost certainly like you did in your basic training, and that seems to be sensible since we're training people to be consultation liaison psychiatrists, at least nominatively. But the other 2 terms can be pretty much anything you like, as long as you can argue that they're vaguely related to consultation liaison, and that's the nature of consultation liaison, that pretty much everything is vaguely related to consultation liaison. So DNA, developmental disability, a sort of medical psychiatry ward term, research, obviously, pretty much everything. So things you might not have had a chance to do yet, you would have liked to do, you could do those as part of the other 12 months of consultation liaison training, and the consultation liaison training itself and that other 6 months is all good experience. Sort of you get to be exacting, you get to like really hone your skills. It's great. I don't think I need to convince anybody that they should be doing CL as a career, because why wouldn't you? It's fun. It's just like, it's fantastic. You just swan around all the time. And because remember, you're not registrars anymore now, you're consultants. So the registrars are working hard. And you remember this. You, as the consultant, okay, tell me the story. And then you swan up and see the patient. And you swan up and see the patient and you just say something consultoid and then you move on to the next one. Or then you go and have coffee. So, definitely, I recommend doing consultation liaison if you want to do CL. If you want to do CL, definitely do it. Even if you don't want to do CL, give serious consideration to doing CL advanced training because it's cool and fun. Any questions? Yes? Yes. Yes, you can. I don't know the details of these things, but it's up on the website and there's regulations.
So will my first year come to and something separate?
Okay, so you can get retrospective training up to a certain number of months. I want to say 12, but I'm not sure that's completely true, because they keep on changing it, and Sarah deals with this. But as long as you could show that what you did previously was relevant, would still have fitted in, then yes, I think you can. I think all retrospective, whatever it's called, recognition of whatever it's called, has to be signed off by various committees. But if you're really interested in this, and this goes with everything with the college, you've got to go to the college website, look at the regulations, see the best way that you can use those regulations to your advantage. You definitely should be doing that. But that's a general answer. Yes, of course, yeah. So the question was, if you do CL advanced training and there's no jobs, which isn't true. I seem to be leaning in like Trump now. Wrong. I didn't say that. Number 4. Yeah, no, you can do that. I mean, we don't train specialists. We train psychiatrists who can get advanced training. Yeah.
Are all CL positions
Probably all the CL positions that you call CL positions are hospital-based, but there's also, I mean, Kathy Mason, who works here, does a lot of outpatient stuff. You're getting that increasingly. A lot of people that are members, the section of CL psychiatry is actually quite large, and a lot of those people are private practitioners that pop into private hospitals as well. So, I mean, that's another thing to think, I guess. Even if you were going to be in private practice, you might want to, you can keep up your interest by doing something like that. I mean, the great thing about once you get your ticket, so much stuff you can do. It's so much better than being a registrar. Any other questions? Yes?
When you think about doing CL training in this line of work with regional, is there room for CL psychiatrists at school? Not very.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, certainly, so the question was about rural placements and CL psychiatry. Yeah, I don't think that's I think that's another string to your bow. I think, not very small places have general hospitals. The people in those general hospitals have psychiatric issues. So I would have thought that was a big advantage, actually. And there certainly are some formal CL psychiatrists that do work. I mean, in Orange, for example, there's a set CL psychiatry. I mean, I think that's an expanding area, and perhaps there'll be more of those things. I mean, one of the reasons there's always been jobs is because it really is a growth area. I mean, I don't think CL psychiatrists are always worried, our discipline is doomed, DRGs will come in and then they'll take all the... I mean, it might happen, but it's actually the absolute reverse of what's happened. It's just got bigger and bigger. So I'm not saying that's going to happen forever, but that's what's happened in the past. Yeah?
Very much scope for CL psychiatry programs.
Well, as I say, I mean, a huge percentage of people that identify themselves as part of now faculty of CL psychiatry are in private practice, and they're doing... I think the most common thing is that after their room session is finished, they go into some local, small, or a private hospital and do CL psychiatry that way. I mean, I think there's probably less of that now because increasingly those small public hospitals are employing CL psychiatrists, but there's still a long way to go there as well, so, yeah. So there's a private hospital just behind us here. None of us go, but there's private psychiatrists here that service that hospital. Nothing else? Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. Next up is child and adolescent is Dr. Christoph Meixliu and Dr. Catherine Kelly. And also just comment that a common tension that people have is whether a subspecialty is going to open up their options or reduce them, and that's something that perhaps is worth commenting on as we go along.
But this is not open. Hello, everybody. I would think that if you had 2 heads, we'd consider you extraordinary. And if you had 3 heads, we would be interested in your perspective on systems thinking. I've got Magella Lajoie's email up because she really wanted you to know that if you have any questions, she's more than happy for you to, she would love for you to call her. So I thought we'd just talk through some of the practicalities of child and adolescent training and then talk about why you should do it. Or why you should think about it, because actually I think you should follow your heart. So to get into the advanced training, you need to have completed stage 2, and you need to have passed the MCQs. But clearly, if you've passed more than the MCQs, like the psychotherapy case or the writtens or the OSCEs, that would be preferable in order to get the most out of the training. It's a 24-month FTE training, and there's a requirement for 6 months of inpatient and 6 months of community, with a lot of flexibility around what else you can do. And there are 8 EPAs, which I haven't listed, but seem to be kind of consistent with the needs of what child and adolescent psychiatrists need to do in terms of formulating, writing, organising the meetings, crossing the age span. One occup rotation, and I think a big draw card for child is the teaching program, which has been established for a long time, and it operates through the Institute and occupies mostly Tuesdays and occasionally includes week-long teaching blocks. The psychotherapy requirement requires you to cover 3 age groups between below 6 to 12 and up to 18, and have experience in 3 forms of psychotherapy: a structured approach, a dynamic approach, and a dyadic and or family approach.
I was just going to say with that one, when you first look at it, it seems like quite a bit, but as you do placements in different areas, like you're pretty easily able to cover, and it's a good way to make sure that you have kind of seen the span of different ages. Yeah. It looks a bit daunting when you first see it, but it's pretty achievable. Because
the psychotherapy is integral to your training and integral to the practice. Nigella thought it'd be useful to think about doing your OSCEs in Year 4, remembering that it's an exit standard. And the question of doing your, getting like rotations, the advice is that you should speak to your Director of Training to talk about accessing local advanced training placements in child and adolescent. But Nigella also wanted to point out that there are options that are outside the LHD setting, and that if anyone had trouble accessing a rotation, she would be more than happy for them to contact her.
In some ways, I think it's a little bit different to CL, where people are saying, yes, there's quite a lot of jobs in child and adolescent because it's expanding, but there has been a bit of concern, particularly in some areas, that within that area people have been told, oh, you can't necessarily get a job. But we've been told by people training in those areas that, yeah, it's something you need to discuss locally, but that it should be possible. It shouldn't be something to prevent you doing it, but it is one of those things that's kind of, I'm not sure if you've kind of heard that, but it does do the rounds, I think. So.
But also, it's about needing to accommodate the needs of basic.
Yeah.
There are interviews for institutes fellowships. They're, I think, at the moment 6 months, and I don't know what the future of them is, but while they're there, you should think about them. And people have done dual advanced training with alcohol and drugs, forensic psychotherapy, and CL. So now we thought we should talk to you about why you should think about doing child and adolescent training.
Yeah, I guess I sort of canvassed the group on Tuesday at the teaching about the kind of things that attracted them to child and adolescent, I guess some of my views as well. One of the big ones is the scope of practice. Just there's a lot of variety within the one specialty, so very different working obviously with young kids, like kind of working with 5-year-olds, sword fighting, then seeing like adolescents. It's starting to cover perinatal as well. You're working with, the whole family, so all the different ages. It gives a lot of variety. Also, you work with schools and other settings a lot more, so you get the chance to kind of really interact with the teachers and think kind of about school placements and how to work with kids and their families. You can develop an interest if you particularly like perinatal or particularly like kind of adolescents. There's enough different positions that you can really get work in a number of settings, but with that group, the teaching is a big plus, and people were saying it's worth the travel, and people have and do regularly come from Orange for like 2 years of teaching every Tuesday. Travel from Orange. There's about 3 people that come from Newcastle, a couple from Wollongong, that come for the face-to-face teaching, because it's a combination of some supervision where you're with your colleagues and with someone from the field, and also then lectures, and it's for a day from your week, and so it is quite, it's a very different way of thinking to your kind of day job, and it's really great to have that experience, because we're aware that it is the only one that you kind of get the allocated teaching time, but it's important because you are working with whole families, complex systems, to sort of have that time. when you say systems thinking, that it's useful to think about families, and that's where you kind of, certainly I came across it most with family therapy, sort of thinking about systems, but actually it's a really helpful way of understanding what's happening in your workplace or your teams. People made the point that actually a lot of people in leadership positions might have a background in child psychiatry, child and adolescent psychiatry, because that systems thinking, I guess, is really helpful. People talked about, and it's something that I find it's really rewarding to feel like you're intervening early and you have the chance to change someone's developmental trajectory. So instead of sort of down the track feeling a bit hopeless, you feel like you might be able to make a real difference. With the fellowships, there's quite a few opportunities for research, and people have been doing some great stuff, some sort of attachment work on refugees in the local area and kind of learning more about them. Someone else is doing looking at OCD and sort of neuroimaging, and that's part of the fellowship project. So a really big range of things that you can do, and there are jobs available. There's generally, because it's quite a big field, like sort of inpatient but also community, there's some new teams, like a team working with younger kids in schools called the Got It team, where psychiatrists can be part of the team, totally different setting, like really interesting opportunities. So there, I guess, the reason why I enjoy it.
Yeah, I think if you think to the things that make you tremble as a basic trainee, the angry families, the expectations to perform miracles. For me, I think child psychiatry has given me, and the training, has given me some tools and ways of thinking about how to walk towards those situations rather than away from them, and with a degree of confidence, but embracing the uncertainty of that as well.
Does anyone?
Is there a provision to do one or two locations as part of the document?
I think so. I think it needs to be approved. But
Yeah, I think it always depends whether the college will approve it. There's a couple of trainees at the moment, one's in the UK and one's in the Netherlands, that are doing training, like part of their advanced training with the fellowship. So, yeah. Again, if the college approves it, all the regulations.
Yeah.
Does the college approve it outpatient or
Outpatient terms, heaps of. With Western Sydney, I guess it would be with the network.
Yeah, we
It
can
would probably
talk to
be
you afterwards if you want
Blacktown
specifics, but
and Penrith.
there's usually the community, like the CANS team.
Yeah.
And so in the area here, some of them are split into two. Sometimes it's like under 12s is a separate team, and then 13 to 18, or sometimes it's all the one team. And then for some of the settings, like for Central Sydney, the Rivendell program, and here at Redbank, I think sometimes they can be considered outpatient if they're like a day program. Again, you need to confirm that, but that's usually how it works. Yeah.
do you think it would be difficult to go into general adult versus it seems like the most kind of different to general work.
I don't think so. I think because obviously all the way through the training, you're still doing overtime with adults and seeing adults within the families. I think that you can pretty easily do. I don't think you de-skill necessarily, and sometimes it can be really helpful, like I say, that kind of systems thinking, like, hang on, why are they having this trouble? Even like, why is that happening with the community team? Why are they having that reaction? Can sometimes be quite a useful perspective. So, yeah, I think that's
Agree.
Yeah,
That's our opinion.
that's right. I don't know, Pooja, any thoughts? Yes, actually. There's some that have done child training and done old age training. And I think that's helpful to work with families. That it is, I guess, a really useful training, and you can still work in other fields, work for a bit, change, but yeah.
Work with 50-year-old children.
That's right. Yeah.
So if you stress on that answers to involvement.
I think especially if you want to work with kids in your private practice, absolutely. Like there's quite a shortage from what I've seen. like in all different areas. And like that has a definite role in terms of many of the people we see in public teams have been trying to find a child psychiatrist for a while, you know, before it's kind of got to an even worse point. So it's definitely a useful skill. And I think sometimes people might choose to see both. You know, they will see kids, they'll also see adults, it's mixed. And some will kind of set themselves up like a child-specific practice. So, good range. Yes, and sorry, so Magella, she works rurally today, she couldn't come to this evening, but I think in terms of if you're interested, she's the one to talk to, and including interviews, I think there are some set times, but they can do them as, you know, like as needed. You haven't missed out if you're interested in that, so don't worry about that.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Sorry, just one thing I forgot to mention.
Oh, sorry, it's just us here in Newcastle. Sorry, Brendan. Just wondering, with the other presenters, when they are they able to briefly repeat the questions that the audience asked them, just so the distance sites can hear? Thank you.
Good point. Thanks for that. For those who haven't signed on, we'll just pass this around sign-on sheet. And for those of you that aren't members of NAPT, it would be really good if you could sign up on your phone. It's free, nswapt.org. But I'll invite Andrew Ellis, the forensic diet this week. Thanks.
How do I get rid of that? There we go. That's good. Yeah. Right. It's still got a cat. Yeah. What did I do? Yeah, it's on here. Oh, here we go. Got to learn how to work the technology. Okay. I'll thank my colleague, Dr. Kerry Eagle, who did this talk last year and made some slides. So that's really good. And I'll talk to you about the best job in the world, which is being a forensic psychiatrist. What sort of things that forensic psychiatrists do. Now, I think that's probably the area of psychiatry you get the least exposure to in your training. Most of you will never do a term in forensic psychiatry. Most of you will never really come across forensic work. It's the smallest of all the training programs, and so it has the least number of advanced trainees. But we like to think that we pack a punch larger than our numbers. So what do? Broadly, you can divide forensic psychiatry into two spheres, the criminal sphere and the civil sphere. So in criminal forensic psychiatry, we provide special hospital care to people with mental disorders who come into contact with the criminal justice system. Most of your advanced training, if you do that, will occur in the high and medium secure settings in the state. There's probably more people with schizophrenia in prison than in general psychiatric hospitals currently in New South Wales. And so there's a lot of work for psychiatrists within prison settings. And that's just schizophrenia. There's many other different psychiatric disorders. We do actually step outside of the walls. In fact, most of my time I don't spend in institutions, but I work with agencies like the police, the parole service, work with the local health services, with disability services, and looking at those issues in the community. We spend time in court. We provide assistance to legal decision making in the criminal courts, the forensic arm of the Mental Health Review Tribunal, the Guardianship Tribunal and others. And we also have our earlier developmental arm in the juvenile justice system, so many forensic psychiatrists will work in that system as well. There's also broadly you can divide law into criminal and civil, and the civil law deals with issues of compensation. That's often around people who are injured for some reason or other, and psychiatric injury can be one of those. There's lots of different tribunals that govern professions and working areas. Most of the psychiatrists that work in the military have gone through forensic psychiatry, and there's a lot of work in the sort of work cover industrial area. So your training needs to cross across both those spheres, although largely trainees pick the criminal area because it's much more interesting. Okay, so we have a stage 3 certificate training, and that leads to your additional qualification, a certificate in forensic psychiatry. That's important, particularly if you want to front yourself in front of a court and say that you are an expert. And if you want to apply for a job in the public forensic mental health services, you simply won't be looked at if you don't have that qualification nowadays. The training posts are largely within Justice Health and the Forensic Mental Health Network, so it's unique amongst the advanced trainings in that. It's really, there's one employer. There are a few other posts within the LHDs, but they're largely by secondment out. You'd have to rotate through into the Justice Health if you wanted to complete the whole advanced training. You can train in private practice. You can train post your letters, but you still have to. So many people will straddle their certificate training over their time as a registrar and then into practice as a consultant. It's possible, and some people, looking for a career change to make their job much more interesting and rewarding, come into forensic psychiatry later on and will train as a fellow. There's dual training opportunities. We've got a number of, so Brendan's one of our dual trainees with child psychiatry and forensic psychiatry. It's a really important area. Many people will train with psychotherapy as well, and addictions. These are the areas people have done it in. There's potentially overlap with other areas. Okay, so I think some of the registrars put this down and said, well, what do you actually do when you're doing forensic advanced training? And they said there's more of thorough history taking, which is a bit of a worry, but anyway. Talking to patients is important. We place a high value upon that, and taking history from people other than the patient. There's 2 half days of training per week, and there's a lot more doing detailed reports with emphasis on your opinion, a lot more emphasis on evidence-based practice and accountability for your practice. And then the registrar said there's much less pressure to discharge, and you might think it's odd, but there's much less emergency situations. The day-to-day work tends to be generally more predictable, and I think that's even more so as a consultant. But if I get called at 2 in the morning, I can tell you that something has really hit the fan. Okay. So where would you work? You have to be a bit mobile. So we've got our forensic hospital, which is down at Long Bay, and the Long Bay prison there. Most of our court services will largely be serviced from the inner city, and the remand centre at Silverwater, probably the largest psychiatric unit in the state. There and other services based out from there. We've also got nearby here one of the medium secure units at the Bunya on the Cumberland campus. Potentially you can do a single term that, in the Hunter or in Orange. That's very rarely done. There's some pictures of our fairly new hospital. That's out at Long Bay. So why on earth would you be a forensic psychiatrist? You get to deal with the most severe disorders. So basically, if you're seeing patients with schizophrenia, you want to see the really severe ones, you come into forensic. You want to see patients with personality disorders, you want to see the really severe ones, you'll come into forensic. There's quite a variety of disorders. I think forensics, many other areas of psychiatry within the public system have become mental health rather than psychiatry, so a lot of areas are split off and you don't see them. Forensic public services do tend to see a much sort of broader spectrum of conditions, and certainly in private practice you would see those kind of conditions. You get to deal with severe behavioural disturbance. You're accountable in many different domains. You get to really, I mean, it's kind of odd for me here, walking into an ordinary hospital. I very rarely do it. I get to work in lots of other different places, police stations or courts or prisons and those sorts of things. A good chunk of your work is being an expert witness, so understanding legal procedure and understanding how you can convert obtuse psychiatric concepts into even more obtuse legal frameworks. And you have this sort of active involvement in the justice system, whether it's one, in the criminal area or the civil area. So I'm not entirely selling it to everyone, okay? You have to have the right stuff, okay? It's not a job that everybody wants to do, okay? And I think that's probably a good thing. There's a lot of challenges to working in forensic psychiatry. Patients, certainly the clinical complexity is usually much greater. And so you've got to want to deal with that complexity, and for some people that's fantastic. Other people prefer to deal with the more sort of straightforward scope of issues. Clearly there's security issues working in this area. I don't put things on, I don't have Facebook accounts, I don't widely advertise where I live, and I have to bear in mind that I see some really difficult things that I want to, and see patients who could, cause serious damage to me or people around me. But the training will prepare you to work in this domain. So again, if that's something some people, who are, a little bit risk prone, like to work in this kind of area, and other people want to avoid it, you're going to have to deal with things like ethics, law, philosophy, different social systems, and for some people that's fantastic. You want to get into all those really interesting intersectional issues about society and medicine and mental illness, and then other people would think, oh my God, I've got to talk to a lawyer. It can be quite high profile, and I think probably the thing that I find that most psychiatrists or registrars who sort of come in a little bit find the most difficult thing is scrutiny. Mostly as a doctor, it's you and your patient. You write out whatever script you think is good, you give whatever therapy you think is the thing to do, and they give you money, and then you part company. But almost every decision you make in forensic psychiatry, someone looks over that and goes, nah, that's wrong. or argue, justify why you want to do that and why you want to do it that way. You're going to get vicarious and actual exposure to trauma working in this area. So you need to prepare yourself to work in this area to sustain your healthy emotional life, to be able to keep being useful to patients and society as a practitioner. This kind of a thing, forensic psychiatrists are the richest psychiatrists, and I don't know whether that's the case or not, but certainly, I'm largely a public psychiatrist and I get paid exactly the same as all the other public psychiatrists. I do a little bit of Medicaid legal work on the side, and you can, from time to time, earn lots of money for that. But you can also do work for legal aid and the Aboriginal Legal Service, and and so that, I think if you want to get rich, there's a potential to do that within forensic psychiatry, but I wouldn't count on it. Not everyone has a Porsche. So what do you need to get in? Okay, got 2 minutes to go. You need to pass your multi-choice exam. You have to pass at least one other written requirement. Forensic psychiatry sets a slightly higher bar than the other training programs, partly because we don't want people doing certificate training still worrying about other examination tasks. And we want evidence that you've got good writing skills, because that's a crucial thing. You need to have an interview and acceptance into an approved training post. So that at present is mildly competitive, so that not everybody who applies will get a post. But it's not, it's not like trying to get on a plastic surgery or something. What do you do in training? So it's like all the others, 24 months. You've got mandatory experiences in different settings, specific EPAs. You've got 6 mandatory ones there, and you've got 2 elective EPAs that you can do. And you have to do an approved course. One in New South Wales is the Master of Clinical Mental Health at the university. I'm told that I should update this slide because Suicide Squad, apparently Harley Quinn is a forensic psychiatrist who goes nuts and turns into a supervillain. But so I should update it. But anyway, there you go. This is Hannibal Lecter, a fictional forensic psychiatrist and serial killer. Thanks. So we are on the, there's like a yearly JMO recruitment thing through eRecruit. Unfortunately, previously we weren't on eRecruit. It was great being in Justice Health. I was laughing at it. You got your eRecruit. Now it's the bane of my life. There's this crazy health department system. But if you there are potential times because people will graduate at various times and a job comes available. So it's good just to sort of keep your nose in if you're interested. But otherwise, the usual recruitment cycle, which I think is in November, and if you apply, there'll be the training positions come up on eRecruit. You apply to those, and then the jobs start in February. So that's the cycle. But there are, like I think Christoph was saying, options like Institute Psychiatry Fellowships. So people have done that. So you don't, if you win one of those, you don't have to compete with anybody else. And people have done things like, we've got currently one trainee in London doing the 6 months there, and we've had another one in London before, and we've got people doing like a research forensic fellowship at the moment. So there's, if you're enterprising, you can get in. Thank you.
Were there any rural questions? We'll try and repeat the question next time. Catherine Drew. Adult 18.
Sorry, where are we?
It's got
That one.
yeah, but that's we could.
Put it in there. I'm so silly.
Just, yep.
Shouldn't it come in there? Why is it there?
Yep.
These instead of this.
Oh, the other one.
Bessie, you sure that's the
It's supposed to be, but if it's not.
not in there?
Try the other. Try something else. It's looking like it's came up then. So.
It's not reading my list. That'll make it awkward for me, I can tell you now. I don't know what it says about 7-Eleven down there. I don't think I can. Look, I'm fine.
It's fading because it's there. It's there.
No, it wasn't. That was a C drive that was there.
That was promising.
Any, while we're waiting, I could do an interpretive dance.
We're a big believer in interpretive.
All right, guess we could. Any other questions? First, idiots, so far. Hang to you guys.
Yeah, but
I should. I didn't say if you can contact, so you can contact me. You can just Google me if you like, and send an email. And because Sarah's still, but she's pretty active in this as well, so there's a question on that.
no, I don't have it in my email. I have it here on this drive that I'm going to use right now. That one.
Yeah, yeah, they're all 2 years. They're all. I mean, that's why I didn't go into that because they're all 2 years. They're all got like 8, whatever's what are they called, WBAs or MBAs, whatever they are.
I'm pretty happy with that. I'm just going to get my.
And you can do dual thing with all of them. You know, I mean, it's. Yeah, yeah. So the idea was you start in 4th year of training after you've done at least the execution of forensics. But generally speaking, that's the something you get. Yeah, we do. Is that right? Yeah.
Okay. I have not prepared to do this on the fly, but I'll do the best that I can. My name is Catherine Drew, and I'm the Director of Adult Training in New South Wales. And I don't have the same approach to this as the other DOATs do, because the other DOATs are all here to convince you to do their certificate. And I don't really think that's what I'm here to do. So what I have done previously is to talk about the difference between generalist training and adult training, because that's actually the question that I get asked all the time. And I'll do my best to explain it to you, especially without my slides. I'll see how I go. To answer that question, it's better if you have a little bit of history in understanding the development of training regulations. So in the 2003 regulations, when they came in, that was the first time that training was divided into basic and advanced. Before that, it was just a 5-year course. Always, before that and now, the fellowship qualification is a generalist qualification. You are qualified to be a psychiatrist and you're qualified to work in any area of psychiatry. The introduction of advanced training, which was modelled on the UK, gave the opportunity to develop some more specialist areas. Before 2003, there was already some child training and there was already old age training, and in fact they were faculties as well, but there was no other specialist training before 2003. And 2003 came in and there was this 2 years of advanced training, and so all of the special interest areas developed training programs, and that they became certificates, and that's where the 7 certificates come from. And in their wisdom, there was a group of people in the college who, in addition to the CL and addictions and psychotherapy and everybody else, there are a group of people who considered that in the same way that they are specialist skills and a specialist certificate, that adult could be considered a specialist skill, that working with people of that adult age, particularly in a public mental health system, although that's not stated, is a specialist skill that people can acquire, and there are specialist things that you need to do that. And so an adult certificate was developed as well. The college had always said that when you enter advanced training, you can either do a generalist pathway or you can do a specialist pathway. So there's a generalist pathway that means that you do anything you like, you just do another 2 years of training and you get your fellowship. Or you can do a certificate that gives you a specialist qualification. So, same as you can do a forensic certificate, same as you can do a CL certificate, it's possible to do a certificate in adult psychiatry with specific requirements about what that means. But there is no obligation on you to do an adult certificate. You can just do generalist. In the 2012 regulations, that changed even further because you used to have to enter into advanced training, even generalist. But now there is no entry. You just finish stage 2 and then you become a stage 3 trainee. So when you do your stage 3 training, there are requirements for all stage 3 trainees. They include, I'll do my best, so you have to do 24 months FTE of training. You have to, the idea is that this is an increased level of responsibility expected of trainees as they prepare to become consultant psychiatrists. You can do it in any terms, and you can do it so you can do it in any terms. Adult, you can do forensic terms, you can do CL terms, you can do child terms, you can do addiction terms, you can do any terms you like in your general stage 3 training. All rotations have you have to do 2 EPAs, you have to do the WBAs to give you your 2 EPAs. If you're doing them in an area of practice, you can only do your area of practice ones if you're working in that area of practice, but the fellowship ones you can do at any point. And you have to do your OCCAs if you haven't got your exemption from having done an OCCA before, which I don't know if anybody's left with that. And in addition to that, the extra requirements are that you have to do a leadership and management module, and you can look that up, and how that's going to work, I don't know. And you have to do the psychotherapy requirements, which is to see at least three patients for at least 6 sessions. If you do all of those things, you finish stage 3, you get your fellowship, you're done, it's over, it's dusted. Okay? Or you could sign up for an adult certificate if you think that you want to work with adults and you want to do that. And if you sign up for an adult certificate, that means you'll have the whole same set of type of requirements as the other certificates have. So the first thing is that you need to have completed stage 2 plus your MCQ, you have to have an interview, and you have to get in. And then you have to do 24 months of training, and you have to do that in working with adults, although you can have up to 6 months working in a rotation that's related to adults. I'm not making this up. You have to do your EPAs that are adult EPAs. So the adult EPAs, there are 8 of them that you have to do 8 of them, and 5 of them are compulsory. You have to do participate in a formal education course that's approved by the adult psychiatry people. Just to be clear, in New South Wales, our format of that is the seminars that are run monthly on a Thursday afternoon that I coordinate as the adult delegate. I'm not sure at what point somebody will know what we're doing in those seminars. Anyway, if you're doing generalist training, then you're encouraged to participate in the adult formal education course, but you're not required to do an education course as a generalist trainee, but you are as an adult trainee. And in addition, in your adult certificate, you have to belong to 2 committees. You have to do a further psychotherapy experience, so not the 3 that we talked about before in generalist. You have to do another 4 with structured psychotherapy, and you have to complete 10 case formulations, 2 with bipolar, 2 with borderline, 2 with schizophrenia, 2 with major depression, and 2 with anxiety or trauma. And I think that's all. So you have a choice if working in, somebody referred to general adult before, so which is how it's generally referred to, general adult, but you need to separate those ideas out in your mind. If you do you could do generalist training, you can do any rotations you like, and you have no specific requirements beyond fellowship requirements, or you can sign up for a certificate in adult psychiatry. Why you would do that? Not sure. Any questions?
General question. Does being a certificate, a specialist certificate, allow the specialty to be listed there in APRA as a subspecialty?
Yeah. So, look, I should talk a little bit. I forgot to say, because I didn't have my slides, I've got to remind myself that there were faculties of old age and of child, and then the certificates were developed, and then forensic became a faculty, and then about 2 years ago there was a decision that all certificates, all sections that had certificates leading to a specialty, leading to that qualification would become faculties. So the other six certificates get you faculty membership, but even though there was a decision that all of the certificates would lead to faculty membership, there's no faculty of adult psychiatry. So there's no subspecialty there's no specialty to put in APRA. In fact, our specialties aren't recorded in APRA as a subspecialties aren't recorded in APRA. It's a generalist qualification. So there's no APRA distinction between the different types of psychiatrists. There are faculty memberships, which mean something. They probably mean something in a forensic setting. They might make a difference to employment in consultation liaison if it's a competitive process. Child usually likes that to happen. But, I'm not sure how it would make a difference to your employability in general psychiatry, whether you have a certificate or not. Yes. The question is, are there any trainees in adult at the moment? The answer is, in other jurisdictions, there are trainees. In other jurisdictions, there's a lot of support and enthusiasm for the adult psychiatry certificate. So that does happen. There are none in New South Wales at the moment. I don't know. It's a mystery to me too. No, the problem is that eventually I'm not going to have a job, but that's okay.
Well, working overseas or interstate will be certificate in adult mean anything?
Okay, so I guess you know, I'm certain that at the moment it would not be a meaningful distinction. In 5 years or 10 years, is that meaningful for an adult job? I guess that's theoretically possible, but speaking as an employer, I can't imagine, I can't imagine, other than the ability to apply themselves to some extra tasks, I'm not sure that I would see that somebody who'd done 24 months of adult and met those things is getting more relevant experience than somebody who's done 6 months, done anything else for an adult job, speaking as an employer.
So, an adult psychologist after hours covering the child presentation.
Yep.
Does that mean are we obligated to narrate about the history, or it's just to keep the child and also psychologist responsible? Usually it's always covered by the adult psychologist.
So the question is relating to who's qualified to assess children or people outside, people that aren't within your area of practice, your usual area of practice. That's an issue to do with well, in private practice, there's no credentialing issues. You're qualified to do anything with anybody as a psychiatrist in terms of treating and assessing mental illness. It's a generalist qualification, and it's really important that you understand it's a generalist qualification. It remains a generalist qualification if you're employed in the public sector as well. It's still a generalist qualification. But there is an issue of credentialing, and there's certainly a program of work in New South Wales to look at the whole principle of credentialing across all medical specialties, because these are areas of debate. But what I would say to you is that at the moment there's no reason that you're not qualified as a psychiatrist to see and assess people across the spectrum with all, and the same applies. We talked before, if you did your child and adolescent certificate, does that mean you can't see adults? No, it doesn't. And so you can see people and assess them, but you should work, you should be professional and work within your area of, competency. So once you don't have competence, but that's just a general principle. You have a fellowship. If you have a fellowship, you have a fellowship. Anything else? Excellent. Thanks.
Thank you for that, despite the technical glitch. I'll introduce Dr. Sachin Patil.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thanks for organizing this, Brendan. I was in your seat last year when it was conducted in RPA. So I'm representing drug and alcohol. Unfortunately, Dr. Mark Montebello couldn't come in. So I'm an advanced trainee pursuing, I'm currently year 1, doing my advanced training at Langton. So we'll talk about why we should pursue drug and alcohol psychiatry. So we are all psychiatrists for a variety of reasons, what other people think and what we exactly do. And well, we have chosen this. So let's pursue this and finish it off in the next 2 years. At least the training. And as all my bosses say, once you get the ticket, life is much better, as Chris said. So, hope so. But definitely, my experience as drug and alcohol, doing my drug and alcohol psychiatry is quite good so far. So why choose addiction psychiatry? So it's definitely one of the interesting subspecialty. We all work in adults and all other subspecialties when we are doing our basic training, and we all come across addictions in every sphere, either psychogeries or child or adult, or so I think that's really great. And unfortunately, we doesn't mean addiction. Unfortunately, is not a mandatory term, so we don't necessarily get an addiction experience as a basic training. But I think that's the problem is quite common, especially when we are working in the emergency department. So it is very common, often missed, and a challenging problem. It can be simple, but it can be complex as well. It seems acute, but many times it is lifelong, and it's more than just drugs. And yeah, the basic, we all, when we train as a psychiatrist, everyone tells us biopsychosocial and cultural. It's definitely it is. And it's definitely one of the excellent training and has good career prospects. So yes, addiction psychiatry problems are common. As I said, it occurs in all ages, all cultures, except one. This is what Mark told me. Any idea which one is that? This was a question I asked him a couple of days before, and he says it's the Eskimos, because they can't grow anything. But then the Inuit, yeah. And I said, well, they can get everything. Even they don't have to grow, they can get it. So, yeah, so that's a question mark. Yeah, but the important part is that it definitely touches all fields of medical practice, not just psychiatry. You can work in public health, pain, gastro, emergency, toxicology, or general practice. And then this is the second question which Mark wanted me to ask, which is the commonest DSM-5 diagnosis. Now we are on DSM-5. So yeah, it's the nicotine use disorder, which is very common, which we don't necessarily ask, which we don't necessarily treat, or we treat it now because the public hospitals are non-smoking zones, so we kind of give them NRTs, yes. But from my experience, before I became a drug and alcohol psychiatrist, I was treating it quite in a wrong way. And after doing my addiction, I think I'm doing it in a much better way. So, these problems are quite often missed. Let's try. Can you identify who uses drugs? This is a very common scenario. Is this a common scenario? Do you think so? Well, it is apparently. Many moms, because to go through their daily chores, do use stimulants. So it is common. Unfortunately, we may not see it in public psychiatry, but it might be out there in private psychiatry. This is, yes, adolescents, truckies, parties, and the armed forces. So yeah, most of these people and other general population obviously do use drugs, but these problems are also quite challenging. They can be good. They are definitely good. Especially when we are moving towards medicinal cannabis and legalizing cannabis, especially in the US, and we would be there soon. But yeah, it can be bad as well, and they are definitely what we see is the most in public psychiatry. they are bad. But this is just a sort of what drugs can cause the greatest harm. Obviously, alcohol comes quite on the top, both to self and to the others. Heroin is listed second, cocaine third, but it does vary, especially what's available in the market, and probably now knowing that what's happening around us, it might be the ice or the methamphetamines. So the other side that the problems can be quite simple to complex. Simple is, should we increase or decrease the methadone? That's true. It's a constant battle with my patients every day. I want them to decrease it, they don't want to decrease it. So it's not that simple, but yeah, it can be complex. It's definitely, there are comorbidities, interactions, drugs, forensic and social and political things. They can be acute to lifelong, especially if you look at the eyes thing, they definitely do go lifelong. Well, addiction is not only drugs. Addiction can be of many things. And I can certainly vouch for this picture. This is gambling. Yeah, there was last week, a couple of weeks ago, there was a news. We spent, I think, in New South Wales, $3 billion in gambling or something, especially in the western suburbs, predominantly. This is increasing, definitely internet addictions and social media, and it's having its impact on every sphere of our life. and then the strange addictions. So yeah, it's interesting. It's not only drugs. It's definitely biopsychosocial and cultural. So what's the current scenario of training in New South Wales? So there are definitely many training positions. It's expanding. They are not only in the local health district, but they are kind of, it can be in other health districts. Positions in adults and generalist and CL. There are currently 22 addiction trainees. Many of them do dual, especially in addictions and child. The training requirements are quite simple, especially talking of the training. If you compare with other training, it is quite simple. And this is the additional year to FACHM. FACHM is a follow-up chapter of addiction medicine. So if you, it's 3 years, but the 2 years of psychiatry get retrospectively accredited. And if you do 1 more year, you can get a FACHM, and that improves your career options, because you can then compete for positions, especially for the ones which are advertised for addiction medicine. So you are eligible for that. What are the training opportunities? There are local training opportunities. Obviously, there are national education program. There's currently a conference coming up in late October, November. If people are interested in addiction, I really encourage them to attend this. And next year there would be international conference in addiction. Career prospects, which we all are interested. So it does have public-private work, research, especially at NDAC, which is at New South, near the in eastern suburbs, and education and training opportunities. Lifestyle, definitely less onerous on-call. Because it's a voluntary client, we don't necessarily act against their wishes. If they want treatment, we offer treatment. If they're not interested, then we say, okay, go back to your GP, or our doors are open if you want to come back. So, and we don't necessarily work with intoxicated clients. We treat people when their alcohol level comes below 0.05 or so. What's the eligibility criteria? Obviously, we are in stage 3 training. The only requirement is pass an MCP exam. ATSN is Advanced Training Selection Notification, which is a bit of a process. And then there's definitely an interview involved. Interview at the moment, it's probably going to get a bit competitive given the demand and the number of trainees which are applying. So they probably would be like a panel, and not everyone who's going to apply may get into it. The advice is preferably apply 3 to 6 months before you are planning start date, because it does take a few weeks to go through the branch training committee and stuff. And most likely it's going to be twice a year intake, but it's not yet formalized. So if you still want to apply, you can contact us and we can let you know. So what it involves, it's more or less same for other specialties. It's 24 months full-time. You do 2 EPAs, which are addiction-specific. There are 6 mandatory, 2 sort of non-mandatory ones. 1 OCA, which is again in the related subspecialty. The formal education course, it's a requirement. It's free. It's provided, it's run through Langton, which is binational, both Australia and New Zealand, and you can join in white conference or face-to-face. And there is a case history up to 3,000 to 5,000 words. The 72 discrete cases summaries, it sounds a lot, but the case summaries are up to 50 to 100 words, and it's the day-to-day clinical patients that you see. And it's kind of divided into 6 cases of each type, like nicotine, alcohols, opioids. So it's pretty doable. That's it. So these are my contacts and Mark's contacts if you need any further information. But I'm happy to take any questions. I'll try my best to answer those. If not, then we can pass it to Mark. Yeah.
How important do you think it is that people have had a basic training to their music? Because they're incredibly difficult to come by. And I think a lot of the practice that you're not going to get a chance to do is if they're on the titles and they're both by basic training.
Yeah, so the question is, how difficult is if you haven't done a basic training, addiction term in a basic training? I'm in the same boat. I didn't get a drug and alcohol position in a basic training, but that's what I wanted to do. You can always apply for it, but if you don't like it, then it's not necessarily that you should continue it. There are always options with that. But I think it is, if you have keen understanding, if you are really interested, speak to your colleagues who have done it before, maybe visit some other areas where drug and alcohol is there. Maybe, I don't know if some people do STP position in private hospitals where it is lots of dual diagnosis and comorbid. That can give you a lot of sort of idea about what exactly it is. Yeah, but it's not much different if you're working in a subspecialty post. It's more or less what you are seeing in your adult psychiatry wards or emergency duties. Well, it's depends. As far as I understand, if you are doing dual, it goes from 2 years to 3 years. Brendan might be able to answer that because he's doing dual. But that's my understanding. If you are doing a dual certificate, instead of 24 months, it becomes 36 months. And then you have to, I think, for what happens in addiction is that out of those 24 months, 18 months is very core training that you have to work in addiction specialties rotations. And 6 months can be related to that non-core sort of, which can be research or which can be in other subspecialty if you are doing the other dual one, if it is related to addiction, or if you can keep a logbook or something that can be sort of counted towards that. I might be wrong onto that, don't quote me on, but I can check with Mark about that.
That's the same principle for all dual certificates. All of them are 3 years, and you do 18 months in one, you do 18 months in the other, and the ones that you overlap have to be relevant to the other.
Thanks, Drew.
So that's a general principle for dual
Yeah.
certificates.
Any more questions? Thank you.
The session, invite Dr. Jeff Stramer on psychotherapies. I presume I have to be here so the people can see me. I hope they're all leaving. Okay.
Thanks. I'm Jeff Strymer. I'm the Director of Advanced Training in Psychotherapy. A lot of what, I won't go over the general issues, but I'm happy to take a lot of questions or any questions you've got. Psychotherapy training is very popular. A lot of people choose it. And it's somewhat different perhaps to the other subspecialties in that you can enter at different stages. We probably have a mixture of about a half who are in stage 3, and then we get a lot of people who do the training as young consultants, and sometimes it's not so young consultants. So, for example, Mari Bashir did the psychotherapy training a few years ago, came to it later. It's not an uncommon scenario that people find, particularly as they get further down the track, they want to do more in-depth work, they're more interested in the psychological aspects. I'm really pleased that now psychotherapy is a mandatory part of all the trainings, and that's a great leap forward in psychiatry, genuinely very important. In that regard, we get a lot of people who are doing dual certificates, and people who do forensic, a few people who do child, certainly CL, a lot of people doing generalists, and as I said, people who've gone into practice as fellows and realise that apart from some fairly superficial coverage, you don't get enough, and it certainly doesn't equip you particularly well. I've forgotten some other groups. Old age, we've got a few people doing old age. You get a number of choices in psychotherapy. There's so-called 4 chapters, and you can choose what you do, but most people choose to, in the stage 3 or in the advanced training psychotherapy, most people choose to do the psychodynamically informed, but you don't have to do that. There are no particular psychotherapy positions as such, so you can think about it, you can approach it in terms of a skill that you apply to whatever you're doing, and it will certainly give you a whole range of skills, or you can do it if you want to become a specialist psychotherapist. The 4 groups of areas are the structured, so-called structured therapies, the CBT, the DBT approaches, the group therapies, of which sadly there are very few trained people in. So if you're looking for a niche or if you're interested in it, I think there's only probably 2 or 3 people, psychiatrists in New South Wales, who are doing any kind of real in-depth psychotherapy, apart beyond psychoeducation, of course, which is fairly common. And so, and it, I'm not quite sure why, but probably because it's no longer inpatient therapeutic communities. So fallen out of favour, but it's clearly an area of interest. Some people who work in international settings like the United Nations and so on, or refugee populations, etc., need to get those skills, and they're available. Family and couples work is, again, in huge demand, and very few people train in it. But in terms of dynamic psychotherapies, which is where most people go, you do have a particular requirement that is not part of the requirements for your other stage 3, and that is you have to have passed your psychotherapy, your basic psychotherapy case, the so-called, what used to be called the long case, or now called the short case, 40 session. You have to have gotten through that to get into psychotherapy advanced training. In regard to what actually happens, it's really very different to the kind of training that you get generally up to stage 3, in that it's very much aimed at adult education. So the seminars are usually mixed groups. You'll have consultants and registrars in the same groups. There's a very flattened hierarchy. It's very much pursuing what you're interested in. Seminars, there's a formal 2-year education program which is weekly and which is very high quality. Some people in the audience can attest to that. We get the best people both from within psychiatry, and it is a course built for psychiatrists, not general psychotherapy, it's psychotherapy aimed at psychiatrists, because we presume that you guys come along with some degree of expertise, or at least an orientation towards the psychological. So we come at it from that perspective. In that regard, yes, the seminars are they're recorded and they're available throughout Australia and New Zealand. So there's outside of Melbourne and Sydney, there's unfortunately not a lot of expertise. So we're in a fortunate position where we've filmed the seminars, not every year, but regularly, and they're going to be on YouTube so that you can revise. If you've got nothing to do while you're waiting for a bus or something, you can look at your seminar of that week. The people who you'll get will be psychiatrists, usually people fairly prominent in the psychotherapy world, and other people, analysts and psychodynamic psychotherapists from a variety of different backgrounds. Plus, you will get exposure in the general program in the first 6 months to all 4 modalities. And we're very active. It's a very active program. There's a lot of people involved. You'll get 6 months basic, what we call basic training, and then you'll get 18 months of specialist, which is dynamically oriented. We don't pursue one particular type. Some psychotherapy training institutes in New South Wales pursue a particular type or a particular form, so psychology or psychoanalytic, psychoanalysis, etc. We tend to range across the broad dynamic modalities, meaning self-psychology, conversational model, you'll get exposure to that, the British object relations, and the modern dynamic psychotherapies, relational psychotherapies, which bring aspects of all of these things. So it's very dynamic, it's very participatory, it's not particularly didactic, there's no tests to do as such. You don't have to submit an essay or jump hurdles. You do have to show up and hopefully participate. But, you know, it's well attended and it's popular, and there's quite a number of people doing it. Now, unlike relative sort of small numbers, we've got relatively large numbers of people because we let people take their time in doing it. So there's 2 ways to do it. You can do it all in parallel. There are some 8 short cases you have to do of a variety from those 4 main chapters. You have to do once weekly therapy, and you have to do a twice weekly therapy. But you can do them in series. You don't have to do them all at once. And in fact, we encourage people to go from the short cases to the once weekly and then to the twice weekly if you're doing the dynamic chapter. As I said before, there's no particular job except if you're in the structured therapies, you might get a job at PRUFAT, and if you're fortunate enough to be there, then you'll get an excellent introduction and lectures and clinical exposure to the structured therapies, particularly CBT. But for most, and there used to be a situation at Gosford, I don't know if there's still a particular site, does anyone know? George Stalinsky was running who was one of our graduates, had a position up there. But generally, you integrate it with your other work, or you integrate it with your private practice work. The other thing that you do is, because most psychotherapy, especially the dynamic psychotherapies, are developmentally based, you do an infant observation or a toddler observation to put you in mind of what that you're treating the younger parts or parts of the patient, parts of the self. Often people stuck or regressed or fixated at or not developed past particular early phases in their development, and you need to be able to be aware of that. You also get an opportunity to see yourself and learn a lot about yourself in the observational position. There's a lot of psychotherapy is about sitting and reflecting and thinking about yourself, so you get to learn a lot about yourself and reflect a lot on your own practice. But a personal therapy is not a mandatory part of this training. Many people, we encourage people to get personal therapy, but it's not a mandatory requirement. You get an opportunity as you go along, beyond the 2-year didactic seminar program and the infant or toddler, you get an opportunity to join another group, which is an ongoing reading group and group supervision. And this year, I think we've got 6 people who are going on to do further, who've chosen to go on to do something beyond the college requirements. Some of them have got the certificates, some are progressing, and they're doing that with the New South Wales Institute of Psychoanalytic Psychotherapy, because people get hooked on it. It's very interesting. It's a spiral development. You start out with general principles, you deepen your experience, and as you go further on, people want to pursue it further. Of the people doing it, I think about half of those people have a primarily psychotherapy practice, but the other half end up in other specialties, or I, for example, I regard myself very much as a psychotherapist, but I run a consultation liaison service, for example. Some of you know me from that setting. And therein I use my dynamic understanding all the time, not just for the individual patient, but to understand the system, to see the dynamics on the wards, etc. In the forensic setting, for example, Amanda has talked about this, but there's lots of opportunities there to think about and work with particularly disturbed patients. I supervise sexual assault situations in the public setting. I've got a role, for example, with the Royal Commission of Child Abuse, Royal Commission as a consultant there. I may get involved with the Northern Territory adolescent detention issues there, etc. So psychotherapy can take you into all sorts of places. Consultancy, if you want, you can use those skills in a very psychological field. So, for example, business, psychotherapy can take you into consulting to business or industry. So a recent program with a recent conference in Sydney featured a fellow who ran the Tavistock for many years, who's now a high-level consultant to big organisations, and he uses his dynamic understandings there. So it's a very interesting field. It'll take you in all sorts of different directions, or it'll just it'll give you information and pathways into all sorts of other related fields. Certainly something that is engaging. Most people finish it. You've got the certificate, but some people just want to do it to get a taste of it and not necessarily go towards needing the certificate. I get asked by foreign graduates, can they, or what's the value of having a certificate? And in some places, for example, if you work in the UK, having a psychotherapy certificate carries some weight, particularly in getting staff positions and particularly anything in psychotherapy oriented. In Australia, perhaps not so entirely relevant, but if you're interested in being a Scot or if you're interested in being a psychotherapy educator, then it's a useful thing to have. And I think one of the recently appointed staff specialists at Westmead, for example, is very, very expert in psychotherapy, done advanced training and done subspecialty training, particularly focusing on attachment, and is associated with the Westmead program, and that skill, no doubt, will help her in her role as a staff specialist at Westmead. So it's both broad and it can be deep. There's over 100 people currently in New South Wales who are involved in the training, but that's because it tends to be able to be done over a longer period of time. And you've got up to 6 years if you want to complete your cases. So lots of people find they go into, say they help children or what have you, and you can stagger your cases. Look, that's a broad outline of it. Maybe I'll just hand it over to you because I've got a couple of minutes to go. Do you have specific questions? Anyone want to ask specific questions? Yeah.
Do you have to need to do?
No. So, as I said, what I've started to say, we film it, but we make it available throughout Australasia, and there's nobody else. So the New South Wales course is available. So there's people, for example, there's a group in Canberra doing it down there. There's a group in Wollongong doing it. There's people in South Australia, Western Australia, New Zealand, etc. The way you do it in that, as a distance person, is people tend to form small groups and have a local tutor and watch the DVDs, and that can be quite gratifying. The group experience of training together is also much more relevant and important in psychotherapy, because for a lot of people they want to go on and have psychotherapy interested peers and stay in psychotherapy related groups. I'm in a group of 9 psychiatrists and psychotherapists who work together in the city. That's pretty unusual, and we continue to learn together, have journey clubs together, etc. So yeah, you can do it outside of Sydney. The smaller the centre, the slightly more difficult, because there's maybe only 1 or 2 people, but it's definitely doable. Anyone else got any specifics? And it costs money, by the way. To do it. So it's not vastly expensive, but the college has, I don't know if anyone's mentioned this, but the college tends to have training fees these days, and so be ready for that. And it costs some money to do our training course. Not as much as some of the advanced training, but it costs about $7,000 a year. It is a commitment, but I think you get good value for what you pay for it. I had second thoughts about that. Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Final presentation of the night is Dr. Doug Sabal for old age psychiatry.
No overheads. Okay, hello everyone, and thank you for staying late. Very appropriate. End of the age spectrum, end of the night. Yeah, I'm Doug Sabal, Director of Advanced Training for Old Age Psychiatry for New South Wales. In terms of the eligibility to do old age training, it's basically the same as most of the other advanced training schemes. You just have to be eligible to do stage 3 training. We do have some people you can do it as a consultant, and you can do it in private practice as well. There are special arrangements around all of that. But of course it's a 2-year program, so most people under the new bylaws will complete it all whilst they're still registrars. The one, I don't know how much people have talked about dual certificate training, but there is interest, of course, in people combining advanced training certificates. And my general advice to people is, if you're thinking about that, talk to everyone early and say you want to do dual certificate training, because I have come across people who haven't planned well in advance the fact that they need to meet all the training requirements for both certificates. And certainly when you're combining old age with another certificate, there are certain core requirements for both certificates that are easy to arrange to do when you're a registrar, but then when if you're a consultant and you're stuck in a particular job setting, you may not be able to access some of those clinical experiences. Although private practice can sometimes be the way out for that, because you do actually have more flexibility in what you do. The application process is under review because we are getting significantly more trainees now under the new bylaws. Under the old bylaws, there were additional requirements that you had to do, like a project in old age psychiatry, that deterred a lot of people who weren't very, very committed to the idea of doing it. But now we're getting increased numbers of applicants. And at the moment, it's still going to be easy to join the scheme, but I suspect as we've got more and more advanced trainees, in some areas we may get into the situation where locally there may not be sufficient or only just sufficient old age posts to accommodate the number of people who want to do the training. So at that point it may become a competitive entry process. At the moment it's certainly not. You need to speak to me and speak to your local DOT at least a couple of months in advance of starting the term, because it still comes down to the local DOT to allocate you to the specific terms. So why would you do old age training? Basically because you like working with older people. It's a very self-evident thing to say, but hopefully, you'll have all have had experience of doing that, even if you haven't actually had a specific old age term. In old age psychiatry, there's much more working with medical issues and also people with cognitive disorders. Older patients tend to be more cooperative and more compliant, not exclusively so, but generally. And it can make for a more orderly working experience. In your general training, you may not get, in psychiatry training, both basic training and advanced training, you may not get a lot of exposure to specifically work with uncomplicated dementia, but in private practice, work with Alzheimer's disease and so forth, it can be a fairly significant component of what you do, so that's of interest to people. The requirements for training, so it's 2 years of full-time work, like all the other ones. There's a basic core requirement of 6 months of work in an inpatient unit and 6 months of work in a community team, and then the remaining year can be more of the same, or you can include some CL work or neuropsychiatry, even geriatric medicine, research and so forth. There's a formal education course, usually 6 meetings approximately a year, of all-day meetings at the college in, obviously in Roselle. And once in the 2-year period, there's also a requirement to attend the faculty meeting, which rotates around Australia. You need to have supervision by an old age psychiatrist, which is usually someone who's a faculty of old age psychiatry member, but there are a few senior old age psychiatrists who aren't members of the faculty. And that's something you'd need to discuss with me probably. What else do I do? Yes, there is a need to do a project in old age psychiatry, but the requirements in terms of the length, 3,000 to 5,000 words, is exactly the same as for the scholarly project. So you can use the same piece of work for both purposes, so long as your scholarly project is on an old age psychiatry topic. And the process is first that it gets marked as a scholarly project, and then if it's passed, assuming it's passed, it then gets marked as an old age psychiatry project. We used to have a very lengthy logbook of different experience cases and treatment settings that people had to complete, and depending on where you work, that could be quite a challenge to cover the full range of everything that was required. That's now been simplified, and you basically have, in the course of your 2 years, you have to do 40 case vignettes or short case histories that cover a range of different disorders, ensures that you get a spectrum of experience. There are a few other training experiences you need to get, like attending memory clinics, doing ECT, doing psychotherapy with older people. But if you're working in an old age service, those sort of things are very, very easily obtained. So that's it in a nutshell. So open to questions, anyone.
Is that provision to change over from signal certificates to people along the way?
I can't answer that question. I think you'd need to talk to both the directors of advanced training, but I think you're likely to have, there are going to be so many different scenarios in what you're proposing. It's just going to be addressed on a case-by-case basis. Yeah, look, that's obviously the case. But to what extent are we going to be funding new services and new positions in the public sector? We don't know, but certainly privately there's the potential for a lot of work. Okay. Thank you all.
Thanks for that. I guess before we conclude, we might open up for a few last questions if anyone has anything else they'd like to ask anyone. And also I'd note that Permanent Day here is coming as a dual training in CL and psychotherapy, and I'm a dual training in child and adolescent forensics, so if you want any questions from our perspective, we'd be happy to answer. Lisa?
Lovely. Did you say what it's like about balancing issues you use at once and just go with their like burden of each day and how you manage to do education for them at once and all that stuff?
It sort of depends on probably which ones you're going to do, and I think it's been said already that you need to plan it a lot and have a good idea of what your general trajectory will be. In general, you're going to be doing, because you've got 3 years, you can do over more, but if you want to get it done in the quickest possible 3 years to do both certificates, you need to probably be doing about 3 EPAs a term. So again, it's a matter of being organised. Having said that, my experience so far is it's quite achievable. The caveat to that is probably that under the new program, a lot of the assessments are being done in stage 3. So if you're studying for OSCE or you're doing a psychotherapy case or whatever it might be, that's going to add another load on top of that. So if you are thinking of doing dual training, it's probably worthwhile trying to get on top of the assessments early. Does that sort of answer it? Brenda, did you have any comments on that? Anything else? Yes?
If you're, let's say, following usual clinical year at what point in the condition you start talking to DOACs and thinking about setting up a distribution?
Perhaps other people can comment, but my general advice would be looking about at least 6 months in advance. But if you haven't done that, then it can certainly be done quicker. And just to repeat the question for the rural, sorry, is that asking how far in advance you should be planning before you're asking directors of advanced training, etc., to plan out your stage 3 training. Sorry.
I was just going to say, with psychotherapy, you don't have to apply particularly. I'll come up here so we don't forget. We have one intake a year, and we run a course every year in New South Wales, certainly in Sydney. Generally, people tend to come along after this meeting, and we also have an open night, which we had recently, where we had a number of people coming along. We start in March, so you've got sort of time, to apply. But and because you can fit it in with all sorts of other modalities, you don't have to much in advance. There is a selective process. We do very rarely do we suggest to people that they not start and that they maybe sort a few things in themselves or their lives out before they start the process, because it can stir people up a bit. But generally, we like to know, because we have to do a fair bit of planning. But most people come along, after the exams in October and November. That's our experience.
I think it probably applies differently for all the different programs. And I mean, I think if you need a job to do that advanced training program, you need to, I think earlier in advance. And I mean, I'd certainly say, if you're interested in forensics, get in contact early and make your interest known. You also have to plan your exams as well. Like if you want to do psychotherapy or forensics, you've got additional requirements that you're going to have to jump before you get in. So I think as early as you know, I'd be talking to your DOATs, because I think we're relatively friendly, and we're also interested in people that are interested in what we are. So we'll chat to you about it.
I mean, I think just to emphasise that, in CL, I think perhaps we're just a bit just flexible, nice guys. So I'm not sure we've had something quite as obsessional as going 6 months before, but anyway, you obviously, for any of them, you're going to need a term, so you should be talking to your DOATs. By the way, I'll speak to the DOATs, which me or Sarah, but also some DOTs, what are they called? DOTs in some areas do this prioritising basic training thing. So if that's the case, if you speak to your DOT and the DOT says, oh no, I can't get you a CL term or a child term or whatever, then speak to another DOT in another area, because it's a buyer's market. So so there is a bit. I mean, I find that very strange actually, but people often prioritise the basic trainings over the advanced trainings. But believe you me, we are happy about that, because we're interested in you coming out here.
perspective, what I given that now we are having safety training, and most of the safety training will be coming in January, or that will be influx of trainees. What I'm seeing in drug and alcohol, especially, is it's gonna get fairly competitive. Especially the onus is gonna be on the trainee, how they are gonna find the post for the next 2 years, and the Scots probably are not going to be responsible giving you those posts. They may not be. So it's going to be demand and supply. So the more early you speak with your ads, they probably will give you more idea where the positions are and where you are willing to go and work. They might not be in your LHD, they might be somewhere else, second-man in research, whatever. So the more early you speak, the more idea you will get how competitive it is. So I think that would be the best thing.
Yes.
Conflict of interest, as I also run that program. So the forensic psychiatry has a formal education course. It has to be a university course. It has to be externally assessed. So you have to demonstrate not only that you showed up, but that you learned the information in the course. So that the one that is done in New South Wales is the Master of Forensic Mental Health through the UNSW. It's largely a distance education course, as the other main ones are Swinburne University runs a course and Griffith University in Queensland runs a course. You can also devise your own one, but you have to prospectively approve that. The only other one that's been prospectively approved is King's College London course has been prospectively approved because we quite an international specialty. So it does cost money. It can, however, be used fee help, so you can defer the cost until you become a consultant. So while you're actually as a registrar doing the course, I think it's no or minimal cost. But the Justice Health gives you 1 day a week for training, and that's sort of expected that you do. There's internal training that you do on half of that day, and then another half day you're expected to be doing your other tasks towards training, of which that's included. So, yeah, but you don't have to do that one. We don't mandate and say you must do this one. You must do my one because I'm the DOAT. You can do other ones, yeah.
But if you're going to stay in New South Wales, it's probably a good one to do because it does focus internationally and within other states of Australia, but it is a heavy focus on New South Wales mental health law as well. I think it depends on which course, but in general, correct me if I'm wrong, there are case histories, there's essays and short quizzes after the lectures. Any other questions? Melissa? Okay, well, I'd like to extend our thanks to all the speakers tonight. Thanks for giving up your Thursday night. We do have a small token of appreciation, but maybe you can join their course if you really want to thank them. But otherwise, have a good night.
Thank you from Orange as well.
No worries. Thanks, join.
Yeah, thanks everyone.